Hello. So we want to pick up again with fluency. I can't I can't begin to tell you. I know we've talked about this in the last video, but I cannot begin to tell you how extremely important fluency is. There are multiple ways of working with fluency, but to get to have children become fluent readers, all the while, fluency, if they're reading fluently, reading by definition implies comprehension. If they are reading the words, understanding the words, have the background knowledge activated, have the vocabulary ready to go, there should be comprehension happening here. Fluency also includes your voice going up, the intonation of your voice in a sentence. You pause at commas, your voice going up at a question mark, stopping at a period, the exclamation mark being used. We have to model that for our children. It just doesn't happen. This is one of the areas, fluency is one of the areas that read alouds benefit the most when they hear the inflection in your voice to become that fluent reader. It has to lead to comprehension. Comprehension is always the end game. But fluency is not, you can't even start thinking about a child becoming fluent until they have that little voice reading with them in their head, which most of the time doesn't develop until the middle of first grade into second grade. They can't read silently, they can't read fluently until that little voice is right there. In other words, until all the pieces are put into the same pie, so they know they have all the pieces together to make reading happen for them. One of the ways to develop fluency is called echo reading. I have several, there's some videos up that I'm going to push to the top that will model the echo read. The echo read is when the teacher or another reader reads a line of a text and the child reads back the same line. Now, it says the child then reads the same line. They don't just memorize it and repeat it. They follow along with the print and they are reading with you. That's echo reading. Choral reading is when the entire class or a small group reads the entire passage together with the teacher. Now, I would strongly encourage you to use this in a small group setting much more often than an entire class. When it's in a small group, you can pick them out really fast, the ones who are not reading, who are stumbling over the words, who are not fluently reading. When it's the whole class, you cannot. If you use choral reading with little kids as a whole class setting, use very small snippets, not big long passages, because they're going to stumble bumble over the words. When choral reading, the child feels the correct pace and expression necessary in reading fluently. You read to them. It's a little bit like read alouds. I cannot emphasize the importance of read alouds when it comes to fluency and comprehension. I just can't tell you that enough. Read alouds, read aloud, read aloud. I've had teachers tell me I don't have time for read alouds. I don't say anything, but in my head, I'm thinking, you don't have time not to do read alouds. You can teach so much more with read alouds. When you pair read, it involves by this definition, a more able reader in the same classroom or from another classroom as a model of fluent reading for less fluent readers. You have to be very, very careful with this, because what will happen is the fluent reader will just do all the reading and the less fluent reader will sit back and let them. That's not the idea here. The idea is to develop fluency, but you have they the only way this is going to work is if your classroom is an absolute risk-free environment in which children are not they don't they are not allowed to talk down to anybody. They're not allowed to to snipe at anybody. You can't have that because they're trying to help teach the other readers. Now, readers theater. I have a readers theater that I wrote that I'm going to put on Blackboard for you from the book The Doorbell Rang. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but it's a really good one if you're teaching fractions with younger kids. Um, but I adapted it into my own readers theater, and I will put that up for you. There's also I have a video up of a second grade classroom doing a readers theater of The Grinch. That's really good. A readers theater is the oral reading of a short play. Now, I wrote my own. There's one there that the teacher has obviously adapted from The Grinch. Readers, the children have assigned parts. They practice the parts. You never, ever let them get up and read cold unless you are assessing them. And then it should be done on an individual basis, not in front of the entire class. You never let kids read cold unless it's for an assessment. And that's done between you and that child, not in front of the entire class. It provides a model of what good fluent reading sounds like. So I'm gonna put that the one that I wrote will be up there for your dining and dancing pleasure, and then the also the one about the Grinch. And you will be able to tell very quickly. They've practiced this little readers theater with the Grinch. They've practiced it multiple times. They've worked on it. It's obvious they've worked on it, but you can still see there are more able readers and less able readers. If this is the Grinch in second grade, it's about Christmas time, so they're halfway through second grade. So this will give you an idea of where some of these kids are with their reading at that point. Antiphonal reading is choral reading in which parts are taken by groups. So you have one group reading this and one group reading this, and it may be one group is reading someone's speaking part, another group is reading another person's speaking part, or they're going back and forth as a question answer kind of thing for antiphonal reading. Tape assisted. Now this is um, on CDs, probably up on with their MP3s or up on YouTube. You can find you get a book on YouTube and you have this children listen to it or watch it. They need to be following along, but listening to a fluent reader. That's the whole point of these. They're listening to fluent reading examples. When I taught second grade and first and second grade, one of my centers was always a listening center, and they had their headphones. At that time we were using cassette tapes. I had a lot of books with cassette tapes. Some were from the publisher, and other ones I had the cook record one of the books, and I had the secretary read one of the books, and I had some of the different teachers read books. So they heard different people reading, but all reading fluently. But they were following along. If they're not following along and they're just listening, if that's what you want, if that's your purpose, that's okay. But if your purpose is for them to be watching that text, learning the conventions of print and books, then you're defeating your purpose if they're not following along. Repeated reading. I used to think that repeated reading was stupid. Why are you having them repeat? Why are they having read and read and read and read? Well, you read the same story 3 or 4 different times in a week, not all in the same day. When a story is repeated, it offers the opportunity for fluent reading because of its familiarity. I I learned when I tried this, because I thought it was kind of silly. When I tried it with my students, they loved it because something that they struggled with at the beginning of the week, perhaps they had mastered by the end of the week, and they were so proud of themselves. That one thing I did have my kids do, and this was back in the age of the cassette tapes, they would periodically, when they were ready, they would take they had there was a I had a cassette player and the tapes and a book, their book, whatever book they were reading, and they would take it and they would record themselves reading, and then they would put their tape in their portfolio and they would wait for another time. And over the course of the year with those cassette tapes, you could hear how their reading had improved. The parents thought it was the best thing since sliced bread because they actually could hear how their child was improving from one week or so to the next. When children can read a text well, they will understand what fluent reading is. The next time they're up against a text that they struggle with, they'll know that if they struggle with it today, if they keep reading it, if they read it over and over, as long as you're correcting errors so they don't get locked into an error, then they can hear by the end of the week, they know they'll have it mastered. And it makes it so much better for them because it builds their confidence. Now, we're going to stop right there, obviously. I wanted to be sure that we got through that this week because we have a couple of other things that we want to do um, for the remaining 3 weeks. But I want you to stay healthy. I want you to stay in as much as you can. Only go to the store or whatever if you absolutely have to. And I will talk to you in a little while later.